Welcome back! You found Fritz. Today's video is a comparison, a review, a head-to-head shootout between 4 recording interfaces. The parameters for this review are that each unit must be a 2x2, meaning that it must have 2 preamps, which of course is always handy for a voice and a guitar, a stereo drum overhead, piano, or any situation that calls for a stereo miking technique, and they also must have 2 outputs for stereo monitoring, and of course, obviously, all the units must have a headphone out as well. The kicker here is that all of these interfaces are priced well within the entry-level category of less than or equal to $100. Since the old saying goes, you buy cheap, you buy twice, the question does arise. Is it even worth it to buy an interface with these specifications, all for less than or equal to $100? Can any of these interfaces outpunch their weight and pull far ahead of the rest? And adversely, who will lose, ultimately landing them in the definitely do not buy category? All of this and more will be covered in this video. Since this is a brand new, very small channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you would click on any of my associate links in the description below. And if you find this material useful or entertaining, then please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stuff. Thanks a lot, and let's jump in. Today's lineup consists of the following interfaces: the PreSonus AudioBox 96, the Behringer UMC202HD, the M-Audio M-Track Duo, and the Art Dual Pre. This video will include the following categories: a comparison of the overall hardware build quality, a D to A listening test, meaning the digital to analog outs, which for this purpose means casually listening to music, as well as music of my own from a current Logic session. Also included is a preamp test. For this test, I will provide 2 examples of each of the unit's preamps. The first being a simple voiceover test using my dynamic Shure SM7, and the second will be a stereo recording so that you can hear both preamps working together. This example consists of an acoustic guitar using a pair of very inexpensive Neewer condenser microphones, which I've reviewed in a separate video in the description below. I will also do a brief comparison of the line/instrument inputs. All of the interfaces minus the Art are solely bus powered via USB cables. The Art is unique in that it can be powered via an external adapter or a 9-volt battery. However, neither are included in the box. Speaking of USB, every interface in this review is USB 2. If you believe that's too slow for modern music recording and production, then please click the link in the description and read the great breakdown brought to you by the team at Audient. Also, all of the units are bundled with either free or pared down versions of DAW software that will get your recording right out of the box, but I will not be covering any of that here. Instead, I will be using Logic Pro as the DAW for all of the interfaces. This video will not focus on specifications on paper, such as THD and signal-to-noise ratio, but rather on how these interfaces operate and sound in the real world. In fact, I didn't want to be subconsciously biased by the specs, so I didn't read them until after the comparison was complete and I had already made up my mind. However, off the bat, I will note that the Art and the M-Audio interfaces are 16-bit. And while that doesn't mean that automatically the sound quality is worse than 24-bit, it does mean that 24-bit opens up more dynamic range to be able to record much quieter sounds without introducing audible noise in the recording. Every example in this review has been recorded at the same average level and sample rate. While a couple of the interfaces allow for higher sample rates, 48 kHz has been used in order for the tests to remain uniform. The computer that I used for this review is my aged 15-inch MacBook Pro, but I also tested everything out on a desktop PC just to make sure that there were no blaring driver issues. So first, let's take a look at the hardware. We'll start by checking out the Behringer. Encased in sturdy metal, the unit is lightweight, but not to the point that it seems like it will be easily moved around the desk every time a cable is disturbed. Although the knobs are plastic, they don't feel cheap, and adjusting them doesn't suggest that breakage will be an issue in the future. The switches work confidently, and all of the input and output jacks operate smoothly as well. Next up, we have the M-Audio, and honestly, everything about this unit feels cheap. Even though it looks nice, It is a very thin, lightweight plastic that, despite the rubber feet, it will most likely flounder around whichever surface you place it on. The speaker connections on the rear of the unit are especially noteworthy in the fact that connecting them does not instill much confidence that they will stand the test of time. I wouldn't go connecting and disconnecting speakers too frequently with this unit. The same can be said for the headphone jack, as it feels very flimsy as well. I have slightly more confidence in the preamp gain pots and monitor volume controls, but not by much. Up next is the smallest little guy in the bunch, the Art. But don't let its size fool you. It is heavier than the larger M-Audio interface. Encased in a nice metal and rubber exterior, this should plant itself firmly on a desk. The controls and switches operate smoothly and feel solid as well. Its size isn't much of an issue, but the rear controls are very cramped to make room for the optional battery power. And thus, this unit employs a 1/8 inch headphone jack in place of the more common 1/4 inch. However, this shouldn't be much of an issue given that almost all pro audio headphones these days offer both connections. Last, I'll look at the PreSonus. Out of the box, it's obviously the most substantial, or heaviest of the bunch, encased in metal and accompanied with attachable rubber feet. Just like all of the others, you'll certainly have to hold the unit while plugging in a mic or an instrument, but other than that, it's not going anywhere. It's the only one out of the group to have indented knobs, meaning that turning them is not continuous, but rather satisfyingly settles at a fixed position. I counted 40 positions while turning the knobs, so you don't have to worry about landing on an annoyingly consequential number. All of the controls are conveniently located on the front of the box, while the rear has the headphone and speaker outputs as well. Also on the rear are a pair of MIDI jacks, which make this the only interface here to offer them. Okay, so next we'll take a look at the digital to analog outputs. These include the monitor outs and the headphone out. For the listening test, I will be comparing all of the units against each other, and will also use an SSL2 as a quality reference. This is a bit more expensive than the interfaces here, and it will be a testament to the quality of any of these units if they can keep up, because the SSL has a great output sound for its class. The speakers used for this listening test are the LP8s by Kali Audio at mixing level, which for me is around 77 to 81 decibels, which is a little on the quieter side. However, I will also make sure that each unit is capable of 85 to 90 decibels on average, which is definitely loud enough. To test the headphone amps, the Sennheiser HD600s are used, which do a great job at revealing any inadequacies. And now, to avoid copyright infringement, we'll take a brief intermission. So here are the test results. Starting with the Behringer, it's not as loud as the SSL. I was able to get the average volume up to around 88 decibels, which is definitely loud enough for most tasks, but that is the max. Also, if I put some more time into listening back to music that I already know pretty well, then I wouldn't hesitate to make production or mixing choices using this interface. The M-Audio was virtually indistinguishable from the Behringer, to the point that attempting to list any differences between the two interfaces would just be an insincere attempt to fill up time. For the Art, it is louder than both the M-Audio and the Behringer, and got up to around 91 decibels on average. Listening back felt a little fuller and taller than either the Behringer or the M-Audio as well. The PreSonus seems to have the least amount of tolerance for less than ideal operating conditions. What I mean by that is I used the same USB cable for all of the tests. However, when testing the PreSonus, I picked up some digital noise which I haven't encountered from an interface in years. Also, while playing back an MP3 which may have had some audible clips here and there, they were audible to the point of being louder than the music itself. And it didn't matter how loud that music was played back. The clips or distortion in the signal would still remain. Strangely enough, all of this went away when I tried the USB cable supplied with the audio box. Of course, I would have blamed all of this on the USB cable that I was using before, but that worked fine with every other interface. There's no way to tell if this is going to be an issue for you, but it's definitely something worth bringing up. Like the Art, the PreSonus is capable of reaching around 91 to 93 decibels at listening position. And when using the supplied cable, at least, you shouldn't have any problem making mix or production decisions. So testing the headphone outs affirms that all of the units are very close and nothing is especially noteworthy other than the fact that the headphone amp on the Art is a little quieter than the rest. It's fine for listening, but levels during recording I would have liked to be a little louder. Honestly, the rest of the points on these interfaces make it too close to call, and while I was going to give the edge to the PreSonus, I honestly could have just been hearing things. The preamps, on the other hand, did provide differences that are worth taking note of. Although these differences are small and may be difficult to discern without listening back to them on studio monitors or mixing headphones, and also when there's just one or two tracks in a session, the cumulative effect of a preamp over a completed session of 24 to 48 tracks or more becomes much more noticeable, even to a casual listener. And while we're dealing with the most inexpensive designs in this video, there's still differences worth discussing. As I mentioned earlier, I conducted a few tests, a guitar recording and a voiceover, which we'll listen back to now. The sun shines through the wrinkled arm of the tree. The sun shines through the wrinkled arm of the tree. The sun shines through the wrinkled arm of the tree. The sun shines through the wrinkled arm of the tree. Staying with the Behringer, it had the most depth, presence, and clarity of all of the preamps. The PreSonus had the most brightness, but in my opinion, it was also a little more brittle than the Behringer. The M Audio preamps aren't awful, but in this reviewer's opinion, they lack definition. Also, they are sensitive to the point of being comical. It's as though the first 75 to 80% of the gain knob was just thrown in as an afterthought, as is displayed here in this example. Check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2. Test test test. Test test test. Well, anyways, moving on. In the end, I really wanted to like the Art's preamps more, but I wish they had more gain. I had to turn the gain up all the way to record my voiceover. I then had to gain up the audio file by 2 decibels to get it in the same ballpark level-wise to the other units. Capped at 48 decibels, the available preamp gain doesn't allow for decent enough levels for something like a ribbon mic, and while it would work fine for most condensers and dynamics, even my Shure SM7 that I used for this video would have liked to see about 5 to 6 decibels of more gain. It's too bad because I did want to give these a higher score. So on to the line/instrument inputs. To test the instrument inputs, the 60th anniversary Fender Ultralux Jaguar is used, which you can learn more about in a separate video linked in the description below. Although I expected the DIs on all of the interfaces to be extremely close given the price point, the Behringer and the PreSonus each had their own characteristics that separated them from the other two. The PreSonus won due to its extended high-end reach, with the Behringer coming in second due to it having a slight advantage in the meaty mid-range area. The M Audio, like the Preamps, simply lacked definition, and the art was also not noteworthy. Okay, so with the testing out of the way, do any of these interfaces stand out beyond the rest? And also, is there a clear loser? Well, as you may have guessed, the answer is yes. But first, let's look at the two units which aren't clear winners or losers. They would be the Art and the PreSonus. Starting with the Art, in all honesty, this interface may be best suited for things outside of studio music production, like live concerts or even band rehearsals where the battery power may be a great feature to have, or other areas where portability would be paramount, such as a location shoot for a film. If the Art had 24-bit recording and more decibels of gain in the preamps, then it may have possibly taken the win. But for now, it would be a buy for me if I needed it for a live setting or as an on-location solution. Next, we'll wrap up the PreSonus. Generally speaking, the AudioBox is definitely a worthy entry-level interface. It has the best hardware quality overall. It's weighty and has the most robust connections and knobs. However, the strange behavior as documented in this video, as well as the hyped brittle sensation in the preamps, keep this unit from taking the top spot. Now we have to mention our clear overall loser. I almost feel bad giving such a negative review, but this unit stood down comically below the rest. I'm of course talking about the M Audio. Its poor build quality, irritating, sensitive preamps, uninspiring sound quality, and its questionable longevity give this unit a clear last place. If you can save just a little bit more, then you'd be out of the basement level class altogether in this reviewer's opinion. Which brings us to our overall winner, the Behringer. In the end, Behringer knows how to do inexpensive. They've been honing this craft for decades, and it shows. This interface is sturdy for its size, and while it's inexpensive, it certainly doesn't invoke the word cheap. And most important of all, the recordings that you can get out of it are totally usable. Of course, you can always find something with that extra bit of depth and fairy dust, but it will cost you many times over what you'd spend on this box. All of this being said, these are all just my opinions. And while I have no affiliation with any of these companies whatsoever, my money would best be spent on the Behringer UMC202HD, even if the name isn't that catchy. So with that, we'll wrap up this video. I really hope that you've taken away something useful from it, and if you have, then please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stuff. And if I've helped you out at all in deciding on which interface you'd like to buy, then please click on one of the associate links in the description below so that you can help this very small, one-person channel grow. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.